Welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast, hosted by Christen Clark. This is a show for kids and families. You are going to meet new people and have fun while you listen. Let's do it!
Hey, y'all, welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast. I'm your host, Christen Clark. The Collide Kids Podcast is a show for families to listen to together where we learn how life and faith collide. I am so glad that you're here. This show is all about helping kids and families see how faith connects to everyday life through fun and meaningful conversations, and that's what we're going to do today. Before we jump in, I want to remind all the parents listening to check out my other podcast, 7-Minute Devotions for Busy Parents. It's short, encouraging, just a way to stay connected to God even on your busiest of days. Because let's be honest, we are all busy and we could all use a little more peace and encouragement in the chaos of family life, right? Well, today I'm so excited to be back with you. Actually, last week was incredible. I went to a ministry conference where I got to meet a lot of amazing people, and you're going to hear some of these people come through. It was just an amazing time to be together with so many fun people who love Jesus and love bringing great family resources for you guys. So I can't wait for you to hear some of these guests coming up in future shows. So I'm really excited about some upcoming episodes this fall and even into the spring. It's going to be awesome. Well, today we're talking about something that every family deals with, conflict. Now, don't turn the episode off yet, because I think you're going to want to hear what my guest this week has to share. His name is Bill High. He is the founder of Legacy Stone, which is a ministry that helps families build a lasting legacy of faith. Bill actually started out as an attorney at a large law firm, but after volunteering and following God's leading, he made a big career shift and started a charitable foundation. Now he helps families strengthen their relationship and find purpose together. Bill is here today to share some incredible wisdom about how to handle family conflict in a healthy, faith-filled way, and even how those tough moments can bring redemption and connection. This is such a powerful conversation that I think will encourage every parent, every leader, and every kid who wants to grow closer as a family. So let's jump in. Here is my conversation with Bill High. Bill, I am so excited to have you on the Collide Kids Podcast today.
Yeah, super glad to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I am sure that lots of people are going to appreciate this conversation today. Would you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So Bill High, practiced law for about 12 years, moved into the nonprofit space, have worked with families all across the country, and that's our ministry, working with families all across the country and even other parts of the world.
What other parts of the world have you been able to work with?
We've been in Australia, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, a little bit in Latin America, and have a lot of interest in African countries as well.
Very cool. I love that. So you guys are far-reaching because there's lots of families that I think need help with what your ministry is doing, right?
Family is the universal language, as you know. So there's lots of languages, but family is one of those languages that everybody speaks.
Yes, everybody can connect with for sure. Well, I'm excited to talk with you today and hear about what you want to share with us. But before we do that, because this is a show for kids, I always ask my guests to tell me a joke. So do you have a joke for us today?
Okay, so I'm going to actually use my name. So I use this a lot. So
okay.
What is the best lawyer name you know? Actually, there's the two best lawyer names that you could ever know. Now, this one, maybe the first one, is maybe a little bit more for you, but the best lawyer name is Bill High.
That is true.
What do lawyers do? They bill high.
They do.
So I had a client actually tell that one to me. I'd never figured that one out myself. But here's the second best lawyer name. This is actually a real lawyer name.
Okay.
It's a girl. I'm half Japanese, so I can tell it. But it was a woman who graduated from a law school in California, and she was Asian. And her name is Sue Yu.
No, that is a great name for
So,
and easy to remember. Like, who am I going to call? I'm going to call Sue. That's right. That's so good. I love that. Okay, so first I want to hear a little bit about what it was like to be a lawyer. What got you into being an attorney, and how did that change for you later?
My undergraduate degree was actually in education, so I thought I was going to teach and I was going to coach. I graduated early and I actually got to teach 7th grade language arts. So I had 5 classes and it was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. But while I was teaching, so just one semester, I had a friend who'd been encouraging me to apply to law school. And so I didn't have great aspirations. I didn't think there'd be a TV show named after me or anything like that. But I did apply, and the last law school I applied to gave me a full ride to go to law school. So it was like God was opening the doors and saying, you ought to go to law school. So I did. And I ended up practicing for 12 years. It was a great training ground for what I do today. A lot of practice in law is just learning to ask good questions and listen, and then try to come up with solutions.
Hey, that's kind of what I do. I ask good questions and I listen. So maybe I could be a lawyer.
Yeah, you can.
And so now you have a ministry where you're working with families. Tell me about that, how you transitioned from being a lawyer to this nonprofit.
Well, we'd always felt like, my wife and I did, we always felt that our call would be into ministry. Didn't necessarily think I was going to be a pastor or go on the mission field. And so that was always in the back of our mind. But what happened is we had a group of people approach us and say, you know what, we can make a big difference in our community. And that led us to starting a charitable foundation. And we help connect the ministries with the donors. It's called the Donor Advised Fund Organization. And I was the first employee. We got that up off the ground. And over about a 20-year period, we saw about $6 billion come into that foundation.
Wow.
And about $4 billion be redistributed out. So it was a great run and a great ride. But while I was doing that work with so many of these families, I had some families start coming to me and saying, you know what? The charitable giving is great, but we need more. We need help with our family. We've got kids entering the business, in-laws who feel like outlaws. We have a lot of conflict, and we need to know how to do better. Plus, we're thinking about future generations and how we can be successful. That actually led me down the road of starting to consult with families. So I got started as a consultant. But as we did that, we're like, we need to serve more families. This message that we have here doesn't just apply to family business. It applies to every single family around the globe. Family, the universal language.
That's right. That's good. You made a comment earlier. You said something about conflict. Tell me about conflict. And I have a quote on here that says that you say that conflict is a good thing. Is that true?
Absolutely. The question that we ask actually in our materials is, what's the purpose of conflict? Why do we have it? Now, the reality is we have conflict because we're all broken people. We have sin in our lives. And so just to acknowledge we're going to have it.
Right.
The only question is how do you manage it? And so that's part of the question that we answer is how do you manage it? But you come back to that first fundamental question. What's the purpose? Why did God give it? If God's a giver of all things, including conflict, what's the purpose of it? And the reality is that when your family manages conflict well, then people will look at you and say, that's a reflection of the gospel, because conflict managed well brings about redemption and restoration. And that is the heartbeat of Scripture, redemption and restoration throughout the Scripture. So that brokenness comes together and people say, how'd they do that? It's the gospel.
I've never thought of conflict as a way that we can exemplify the gospel through our relationships. So tell me about how conflict actually can help. How can it help families?
We'll be right back after this. You know, raising kids in the digital age isn't easy, but Bark Technology makes products that help parents keep their kids safe online and in real life. They have an app, a phone, and a home device that lets families set parental controls on their internet-connected devices. I love the app because it helps us manage screen time and blocks websites and apps we want our kids to avoid. It also sends alerts and gives us the ability to monitor texts and social media and even track your child's location. Visit bark.us to learn more about how you can keep your kids safe online. Use the code COLLIDEKIDS to get 15% off your subscription of the Bark app.
So just one, to recognize the purpose of it, that if people are looking at you in your neighborhoods, you're out playing and walking around, they're like, man, they manage that thing well, then they're attracted to you. But part of the thing about managing conflict is, one, knowing your style. And the most common conflict style is actually avoidance. So we want to sweep it under the rug and not talk about it. The second most common style oftentimes is eruption. We just blow up. And there's actually a really healthy middle in there, which all comes to how do we actually collaborate and move towards a place of restoration. And what we found, the simple thing is there's not a lot of magic to this. This comes straight out of the scriptures. They teach it in business. They teach this inside of successful companies. And so why don't we do it with our families? Well, what is the model? Is that typically you just have a process around how you manage it. What's the process look like? Typically, you start off with a trigger question. And the trigger question might be, hey, Christen, do you have time to talk? And a little bit of that voice inflection helps you to know that we're going to have a conflict conversation. And then when you recognize, hey, this is a conflict conversation, it actually changes the position of each person, because then you know that your job is to be a listener and I'll be the sender and the receiver, if you will.
Okay.
And my job is to communicate directly and honestly, not beat around the bush. And then your job is to ask questions. It's the idea of listening to understand versus listening to respond. So you're going to ask clarifying questions. Did I get that right? Is there more? You're going to mirror back some of that conversation. And you maybe heard some of this, Christen, this idea that if I mirror the conversation, if I actually can repeat back what you say to me, it's like 86% increase in comprehension, because you know you're being heard and you actually are appreciating it, feeling it, all those kind of things. But those clarifying questions then finally get you to a place where you can say, is there anything else? Is there anything more? And then at that point, you can actually move to restoration. I'm sorry, I offended you for saying X. Will you forgive me? And when you get to that, now you're actually back to the place of bringing restoration.
I love that. And that's so simple. And yet so many people struggle with this. Like you said, I think most people just really try to avoid it, right? And I feel like that's the nice thing to do, like just sweep it under the rug, pretend like it didn't happen. But what happens when we do that? What happens when we avoid conflict?
They say the avoidance style ultimately is a lose-lose proposition. Now, there are times where avoidance, okay. I mean, maybe the situation is so hot that you need to actually give it a couple hours to cool. But if you always do that, then what happens is you get stuck. And that's why you see people file for divorce, because they say, we just got to a place where we weren't connected anymore. Well, it wasn't that. Oftentimes, it's that you hadn't actually dealt with the stuff that had built up over time.
That's true. And then the other type of conflict you talked about was eruption. What's the danger in just erupting all the time and getting it all out? I mean, I think we all kind of know.
I had one family that was very much their style. They're like, we just kind of let it go and the volume goes up. And what happens is that when you let people have it, you just produce wounding. And the scriptures are really clear about that idea of the eruption idea and the damage that it causes, particularly if you never bring it back to that place of restoration. And again, tone and body language are like 80% of communication. It's one thing if I say, "Hey, Kristen." It's another thing when I say, "Kristen."
Right.
Same word, but different tone changes everything. I suspect you've never had that issue with your husband, though.
Never. No, we don't. We totally do. And we say this a lot. It's not what you say always, it's how you say it. And so I feel like if the volume goes up, the understanding goes down. But for especially a lot of parents, we think, I got to yell and get my point across. But when the volume goes up, it doesn't always increase the understanding, does it?
Yeah, and I know that there are kids who listen to this podcast as well. And the idea here is that a gentle answer, a gentle one, turns away that wrath and anger. But a harsh word, one word with the wrong tone, what's it do? Stirs up that anger. So that's one of our big messages is how do you watch that tone to help produce wholeness? Nobody wants even to, whether it's going to school or going to work and always have turmoil in their lives. That's a horrible thing. Why would you do that? But if you learn that gentleness and slowing down and lowering yourself, you get better relationship.
And that's what we want, especially in our families. Like we want restoration and reconciliation with our families. What would you say to families who feel like, yeah, we're too far down this rabbit hole? Like we've been erupting for way too long. I don't know if we could backtrack it. Or we've been avoiding all these things for so many years. I don't even know where to start. What would you say to them?
If you got little kids, one of the first places to start is with a code of conduct. John Wooden, famous story, legendary basketball coach, won all these basketball titles, great basketball player in his own right. His dad, when he was a kid, 12 years old or something, gave him a sheet, a little 3x5 card that had a code of conduct. Here's how I want you to live. And so we encourage families to write down their code of conduct. And that code of conduct is pretty simple. It's the idea of honor your parents, respect your elders, don't gossip, don't lie, be direct, be honest. A handful of simple rules that govern how you have conversations in your family. That's one of the first places to start. And if you've got adult kids, that's a different story because you can still write down the code, but you can't necessarily make them adopt it. But by your own relationship, you and your husband, there may be others that would say, they do that differently. I wonder if we should talk about that. So that's what you're looking for. But it's some simple code of conduct, call it a code of ethic. It's the same kind of idea, by the way, of what the 10 Commandments really are doing, because it's honor God, love people. First 4 commandments are upward, the next 6 are horizontal. And that's what it is. It's a code.
Oh, I love thinking about the 10 Commandments that way. Our first 4 have to do with our relationship with God, and then the other 6 have to do with our relationship with people, which it's so important. Like people that say they love God, but then they treat the people around them in a way that's disrespectful or not honoring. You start to question that relationship with God, right?
The people who live by a code, whether you're 80 years old or whether you're 10, if you have a code of conduct, the way that you live, then people begin to notice and your life stays on track. It's noticeable and you're happier. People around you are happier.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about this idea of conflict, because I know there's at least a few families that are listening that are like, yeah, we really need help with this. So what are some common issues that families tend to have when it comes to conflict?
The very first one really is that it's the idea that they're listening to respond. So you say it's what I call the zigzag. You said this, I say this, and the conversation just goes like this, and we never listen to understand. And so the more that zigzag goes on, what happens is the volume goes up, the tone goes up, and we never really get anywhere. And so what we say that if you change your mindset that I'm not going to listen to respond, but I'm going to listen to understand, then instead you have that sender receiver. Now it's me asking questions until we get to a place of resolution. That's one of the very first things that you do. And that's why that code of conduct becomes really simple. Is usually we'll see families, we're going to drop our tone.
Yeah.
And I've seen that work very successfully. So when my wife and I first got married, we had 3 rules. Now we have more, but the simple rules were we were committed to communicating. And that meant that we couldn't draw away, we couldn't shut the door and shut somebody out. And it also meant that we would deal with the hurts immediately. Before we went to bed that night, we were going to deal with the hurts, and that we were committed to asking for forgiveness. Sometimes it's kind of hard, actually, to say, I forgive you, but there's freedom in that. So that kind of mantra, this is based upon Deuteronomy 6, by the way. And the Deuteronomy 6 idea, what does it say? It says, these things should be on your heart. And then what are you supposed to do? Talk about them when you get up, when you lie down, when you're walking by the way, pretty much all the time, okay?
Yeah.
And then it says, and post them on the door frames of your house. And the reason why you want to post them on the door frames of your house is, the Bible describes us as a sheep, and Webster Dictionary describes sheep as valuable but dumb animals.
Yes.
We need repetition. We need the hook. We need the prod, all those kind of things. We need these constant reminders. And God knows that. In Jewish culture, when the Bible was written, it was an oral culture. It was the idea that we told stories because we weren't people who read. And so there was constant repetition. And the Jewish literature will tell you that by the 101st time of repetition, then you got it. This idea of repetition, the repetition of the code, the repetition of the process, the behaviors makes all the difference.
I think that's so cool that you guys have that printed in your house, and it can be so simple. It doesn't have to be, 25 different lists of code and rules. You can just have a few that make things simple.
We tend not to think about this in many cases because we got kids and we got this immediate window that we're working in. But the Bible wants us to think about our grandkids, our great-grandkids, the generations to come. And again, the research tells us the Bible is very clear about how we're supposed to think about generations. We want our kids to think about their kids and the future because that's how we change the world. We change the world one generation at a time. But in acknowledging that, every generation has to say, this is what I own, and I'm going to teach it to my kids.
Let's talk a little bit about what you just said, talking about this idea of legacy. What does legacy mean, and why is that so important that our family thinks about having a legacy?
So the Bible, again, talks about this idea of legacy in a different way than most of us think about it. We hear that term legacy and we think, oh, that's not for me. That's for people with money, or it's about wills or trusts. But legacy, we redefine legacy to say legacy is what you set in motion. And what that actually goes to is 2 Corinthians 5:10 says that we will all stand before the judgment seat of Christ and be held accountable for our deeds in the body, whether good or bad. We're all going to stand there. That's what we're setting in motion that day in heaven, where every single one of us, moms, dads, kids, everything, we're going to stand there in heaven and we're going to get to see the fruits of what we invested in. There'll be moms, kids there, and, maybe there'll be aunts and uncles, and there'll be some of those people, and you're like, wow, how'd you get here? And there'll probably be some people that'll be like, I didn't know you were going to be here, That is, by the way, when we think about conflict, think about this. There'll be people in heaven that we didn't agree with. And it's like, wow. And maybe we never resolved that conversation. That's a sobering one, isn't it?
Truly. So what do we do about that? Thinking about those conflicts that we've had, maybe they've been ongoing. Maybe it's something we've never worked out truly. Is it too late to go back and try to fix those things, or should we move on?
We do have a book coming out in October that's called The Legacy Life. And one of the chapters in the book is actually called Repairing the Past. And that is one of the exercises I think that we all need to do. And we just need to say, how do we go back and repair the past? Sometimes it is stuff that happened 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember the story about Joseph in the Bible, of course, we so oftentimes in our Western culture, we lift up Joseph and say, what a good guy he is, and he overcome his brothers, selling him into slavery and everything. But the reality is, it's not just the story about Joseph. It's actually a story about his brothers and Judah, because after 20 years, they finally come back together and they restore the relationship. 20 years, they repair the past. And there's just tremendous power in repairing the past. So one very practical thing, Christen, that we talk about is that when you're going to navigate family conflict, you want to have a regular family meeting. And on the family meeting agenda, have conflict on there. Is there anything we need to talk about? Is there anything maybe that didn't get resolved? I have a friend, and they always called it Grump Night. Every Thursday was Grump Night. Hey, Christen, you said something to me, and on Grump Night, I'm going to talk to you about that. But it just caused them as a family to put their stuff on the table instead of letting it build up. And that family still today, they do like a monthly prayer call.
Wow.
They still like each other.
Yeah.
And it's because they practice Grump Night. And there's just tremendous power in saying conflict's not bad. We just need to put it on the agenda and deal with it.
I love that idea too of just having it on the schedule. So even if it's a situation where it's not that big a deal, but it's still sitting with you, maybe I will address this because I know it's set on the schedule for our family to talk about it. And so having those conversations. Do you feel like the conflict resolution framework or that idea, does it work different between parents and children versus between spouses?
No, I think, again, the process is still the same. Now, hopefully, as parents, we do it in a little more grown-up manner, if you will. We recognize these things quicker. But I think actually with kids, we do have to work really hard on this idea of watching our tone and not letting our anger. So sometimes I've had to go to my own kids, and now I've got adult kids now. But, man, if I let my tone get out of the way, do I need to go back to them and ask for forgiveness too? So I think the process is still the same. And by the way, every code of conduct really needs to end, in my view, with that place of restoration. Christen, I'm sorry that I said X. Will you forgive me? Now, my job, by the way, is to ask for forgiveness. It's your job to decide what you do with it. And there's tremendous freedom in me just asking. Likewise, there's tremendous freedom if you grant it.
Yeah, that's so true.
It doesn't mean you'll forget it forever. It's not like if something bad happened, it's not like you'll forget it. But what you will do is you'll stop bringing it up. That's just some of our reality, is that sometimes we do get wounds from a harsh word or a harsh statement. And then if somebody truly comes repentant and they says, man, will you forgive me? And you forgive them. You don't keep saying, man, do you remember when? You don't bring it up anymore. You just got to say, I'm going to put it away from me, because that's what God does. He says, I remove it. I can't even remember it anymore. That's the context of and that's what we need to emulate, since we're made in the character and the image of God.
I love that, because I think that is hard for people to think like, okay, I have to forget it now. But really, that forgiveness is just no longer bringing it against that person when you're in relationship with them. Well, Bill, this has been so helpful and so encouraging. You have a whole family conflict blueprint, a small group curriculum that families can use, churches can use. Tell us a little bit about your program.
Yeah, so they can go to our website, legacystone.com, and they can see it. So we have a student guide here, Family Conflict Blueprint. There's a leader's guide, student guide. If they're wanting to lead it in a small group format, certainly they can do that. Or if they just want to take the course individually, it's available on demand on the website. So that's that particular course. We've got other courses on there as well, but this is the one certainly we've had a lot of requests for. How do we navigate family conflict? Because it's a reality.
Absolutely. Rightfully so. I mean, lots of families are going to be, I think, encouraged to see this and to get help with these conflicts. And it's also preventative care, right? It's something we can do and prepare for, because we know if we're not in conflict, conflict will come eventually. And so being prepared for those things is great. Well, Bill, thank you so much for being on the show today. Before I let you go, I always ask my guests to tell me a memory from when they were a kid. So do you have a memory you want to share with us today?
Yeah, actually, my dad died when I was 12, but one of my favorite memories, he had his own set of struggles, but I was like 5 years old, and he carried me back on his shoulders. We'd been out to check the garden, see how things were growing. And it's one of those moments of intimacy where he just sat me down on the ground, and a cool summer breeze kind of hits me and I shiver. And he's like, "Hey, are you cold?" And it's one of these little unspoken moments where you could feel the closeness of father and son. And again, I still remember that as one of the sweet moments of being father and son.
Oh, I love that. That's so sweet that you still have that memory, even though he's no longer here. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's so good. Well, we will definitely put information about your curriculum and where our listeners can find more about you in our show notes. So check that out. Thank you, Bill, so much for being on the show today. This was great.
Thanks for having me.
Man, I took so many notes. I loved talking with Bill today, and I learned so much. And I am so excited for how we're going to get to start using some of this right away. Bill had a lot of great nuggets of truth today, like conflict is a good thing. What's the purpose of conflict? We're all broken people, and so we have to learn how to manage conflict. When your family manages conflict well, it's a reflection of the gospel because it brings about redemption and restoration. Isn't that so good? He also said that there's a few different ways that we respond to conflict, either avoidance, where we pretend it didn't happen and sweep it under the rug, or eruption, we blow up. And he said the happy middle is collaboration. When we're all coming together, we're willing to work it out. We're not avoiding it, but we're not losing our cool in the middle of it. He also encouraged us to listen to understand instead of listening to respond. It's easy to listen to respond because we want to think of the next thing to say, but instead we need to take the time to understand each other. It allows both parties to feel more connected and more seen. I also love the part where he was talking about his family's code of conduct and how everybody needs a code of conduct for your family. That's such a fun idea for your family to sit down and figure that out this week and what those rules are that you're going to live by. And it's noticeable to other people because you're happier, you're in better relationships, and your life tends to stay on track. And I love that Bill encouraged us to put conflict on your family meeting agenda each week. Don't let it just build up. Make space in your time with your family to talk through things and work things out. It's going to make for a much more healthy family dynamic. If you'd like to learn more about Bill and his family conflict blueprint study, you can go to their website, legacystone.com. We'll be sure to put those things in our show notes so you can check that out. It would be great for your church group or for your homeschool group or maybe your family to sit down and study this together. Well, now it's time for one of my favorite parts of the show. It's our family discussion segment. This is where we're going to ask a few questions to help you guys keep the conversation going. So if you want to pause after each question to talk about it together now, or you can listen to all three and decide which one you like best, or just talk about them all later. Whatever works best for you and your family. This is for you to use. So I'm not going to tell you what to do, but let's talk about it. Here's the first one. What does it look like to listen to understand instead of listening to respond? Share some examples where you can listen to understand instead of listening to respond. All right, here's the second one. Bill said today that conflict is a good thing. Do you think that's true? And why do you think God allows conflict in families? All right, here's the last one. What should your family's code of conduct be? Try creating your own simple version with just 2 or 3 things that are quick and easy to remember. Maybe one of them can be about ice cream. I don't know. And then talk about what each one means to you. Well, I hope those questions spark some great ideas and conversations with your family. And let me know if you come up with a code of conduct, especially if it includes ice cream. I want to hear about that. Well, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Collide Kids Pod. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend or family member or someone who you know could use some encouragement and some great ideas for conflict. And you can always head over to collidekidspodcast.com to catch up on past episodes and sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss any updates. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have all these episodes for this season and the last on YouTube, so you can watch the interview if you're interested in watching it instead. You can do that too. And one of the best ways you can support the podcast is by leaving a quick rating and a review on your favorite podcast app, like Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen. It really does help other families find out about this show. Also on our website, you'll see links where you can support the show financially, like by using the Amazon link or by clicking the icon that says Buy Me a Coffee. And as always, I am so grateful for your prayers over this ministry. It means so much to know that you're praying for us. Well, thank you so much for listening today. It has been great spending this time with you. And in case no one has told you today, I would love to be the first to remind you that God loves you so much. Thanks for listening.
Looking for help and hope can be a chore, and you don't need any more of those. So consider downloading the River mobile app. It's a radio station committed to playing songs that will lift you up and help you out no matter what you're going through. Songs from artists like Lauren Daigle, Zach Williams, and Toby Mac. It's totally free with no subscriptions. Just search 1049 The River in your app store or listen online at riverradio.com.